Daddy! Daddy! Wake up! Noah's desperate scream shattered the silence of the Cole mansion like glass breaking in the dead of night. His tiny fists pounded uselessly against his father's motionless arm, while Lily clutched her teddy bear, tears streaming down her face without a sound. Harrison Cole, the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast, the man they called the Shadow of Death, lay sprawled across the cold marble floor at the foot of the grand staircase. His eyes were shut, his breathing shallow and controlled, a macabre performance executed to perfection. But no one else in that room knew it was all an act. To the children, their father had collapsed. To Penny, the young nanny who came running in with her face pale as ash, still wearing her simple blue uniform, this was an absolute tragedy. But to Monica, Harrison's fiancée, this was merely an inconvenience. Monica didn't rush to the man she supposedly loved. She didn't check his pulse. She didn't cradle his head. Instead, her slender figure wrapped in a designer black dress took a step backward, her cold eyes darting toward the hallway, calculating, measuring, scheming. Then she spun around, searching for someone to blame, and her gaze locked onto Penny like a predator spotting wounded prey. "You?" Monica's voice cut through the air like a blade, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at the nanny like a weapon. "You useless, stupid, worthless girl. This is your fault." What happens when the Mafia boss opens his eyes and reveals the truth? Like and share if you want to see Monica get what she deserves. Subscribe now, you won't want to miss what happens next. Penny paid no attention to Monica's scolding. She rushed to Harrison's side as if her own life were hanging by a single fragile thread. Her knees struck the cold marble floor, yet she felt no pain. Her trembling hands pressed against the chest of the man whose name commanded silence in every corner of the city. Searching for the faint rhythm beating beneath, she lowered her head, her cheek almost brushing his lips as she checked for breath. It was still there, weak, but still there. Noah and Lily stood beside her, their wide eyes filled with terror as they stared at their father lying motionless. Penny looked up and forced herself to shape a reassuring smile, though her heart pounded like a war drum inside her ribs. In the gentlest voice she could manage, she told them their father would be fine. Penny promised. Their father was the strongest man in the world. He was Noah and Lily's superhero, and superheroes never lost. The two children clung to her at once. Noah gripped the sleeve of Penny's shirt, while Lily buried her face against Penny's shoulder, her stuffed bear still pressed tight in her arms. They believed her. They had always believed her. Meanwhile, Monica had completely turned her back on the scene before her. She pulled her phone from her Hermes handbag, fingers tipped with perfectly manicured nails gliding swiftly across the screen. She did not look at Harrison even once. She did not kneel beside the man she was about to marry. Her voice rang out cold and flat when the call connected. "Father." He fell down the stairs. "It looks serious," she said. She paused for a second, then continued in a more urgent tone, though not out of concern for Harrison, but for something else entirely. "Has the prenuptial agreement been signed, Father? Has the property transfer been completed? If he dies before the wedding, what do I get?" Harrison lay there as still as a corpse, yet every word Monica uttered stabbed into his heart like the thrust of a knife. He had to gather every ounce of willpower to keep his body from reacting, to keep his fingers from curling into a fist, to keep his jaw from clenching tight. Rage boiled inside his chest, but he swallowed it down. He needed to hear more. He needed to know the full and final truth. And then Monica said it. "Father, call the lawyer." She stopped abruptly, realizing she had misspoken. "I mean the doctor. Call the doctor." Silence stretched for a second, as though the entire room were holding its breath. Monica hurried to change the subject, her voice lifting slightly, as if trying to bury the fatal mistake she had just made. But it was too late. Harrison had heard, and he would never forget. Penny was still holding the children, trying to shield them from the suffocating tension that blanketed the room. Lily looked up at her, eyes glossy with tears, her voice so soft it was almost impossible to hear. "Penny, why isn't Aunt Monica crying? Doesn't she love Daddy?" That innocent question sliced through the air like a blade. Penny went rigid, not knowing how to answer. She could only pull Lily closer, gently stroking the soft hair of the 4-year-old child who was trying to make sense of a world far too cruel for her tender heart. A tear slipped down Penny's cheek and fell. It landed on the back of Harrison's hand as he lay unmoving beside her. Warm. That was the first sensation he felt since this performance had begun. Not the cold of the marble floor, not the falseness in Monica's voice, but the genuine warmth of tears shed by someone who truly cared. Penny drew in a deep breath, then lifted her gaze toward Monica, who was still speaking on the phone in the corner of the room. Her voice rang out clear despite the frantic pounding of her heart. "Miss Hale, please call 911 right now. Mr. Cole needs emergency help." Monica spun around, eyes sharply lined as though they could burn Penny where she knelt. She ended the call and stepped forward, the heels of her shoes striking the marble with cold, measured clicks. "Shut up. What would a servant know? You're nothing but hired help in this house. Remember that. I am handling this. I don't need you to tell me what to do." Penny did not retreat. She remained on her knees, still holding the children, still keeping one hand pressed to Harrison's chest, as if she could anchor him to this world by sheer will. Her eyes met Monica's, and in that moment something flashed between them. It was not fear. It was resolve. Harrison felt it all, though his eyes remained closed. The warmth of Penny's hand against his chest, the broken sobs of his children, the cold cruelty in the voice of the woman he had nearly taken as his wife. And in his mind, the decision was made. Monica Hale would be out of his life. Immediately. Forever. Monica shoved her phone back into her handbag and turned around, her eyes blazing when she saw Penny still kneeling beside Harrison. "I told you to move away! You filthy thing! Don't you dare touch him with those servant hands of yours!" Penny lifted her face and looked straight into the eyes of the woman seething before her. She did not move so much as an inch. "He needs emergency care. Someone has to stay with him until the doctor arrives." Monica's teeth ground together. She could not believe that a mere maid in her house would dare to talk back, would dare to meet her gaze without the slightest trace of fear. It felt like a slap across her pride, an insult she could not tolerate. "Who do you think you are?" Monica roared as she lunged forward, her hand seizing Penny's hair and yanking it back hard. "You are nothing but a servant, a piece of hired help, something I can throw out whenever I please." Penny clenched her teeth against the searing pain tearing across her scalp, yet she did not release the children clinging tightly to her. Noah and Lily trembled in fear. Lily whimpered softly, while Noah stared wide-eyed in horror at the scene unfolding before him. "I am not going anywhere," Penny forced out through her clenched jaw. "The children need me." That answer poured oil onto the fire. Monica's rage boiled over, and she struck Penny with a force that sent a collective gasp through the room. Penny stumbled but held the children even tighter. Her long nails caught Penny's cheek, leaving a stinging mark that began to redden. A small drop of blood appeared, but Penny didn't flinch. Penny remained silent, refusing to give Monica the satisfaction of a cry, a scream, or a plea for mercy. She only turned back to look at Monica, with eyes as steady as tempered steel, and that drove Monica further into madness. Yet there was someone else who could not endure it any longer. Noah, a 4-year-old boy with tiny legs and a brave heart, suddenly released his grip on Penny and charged at Monica. He kicked hard at the woman's shin, his eyes red with fury. "Don't hit Penny. Penny is good. Penny loves me. You are the bad one. You are an evil witch." Monica nearly lost her balance from the unexpected blow. She steadied herself and glared down at the child as if she could devour him whole. "You dare kick me, you little brat." She lunged toward Noah, her face twisted in a terrifying snarl. She was ready to lash out at the defenseless 4-year-old, but Penny was faster. She lunged forward, using her body to shield Noah, pulling him into her arms and bowing her head so that her back would take the full force of the attack. "Hit me," she cried out. "Hit me as much as you want. But don't touch the children." Harrison lay there, and with every passing second, a brutal war raged inside him. When he heard his son's cries, the instinct of a father, like a wolf cornered with nowhere left to retreat, surged violently through him. His fingers twitched. His eyelids quivered. He almost opened his eyes, almost sprang to his feet to show Monica what hell truly meant. But he restrained himself. With all the iron will forged through years in the underworld, he held back. He needed to witness it to the very end. He needed to know who Monica truly was. He needed undeniable proof. Then heavy footsteps echoed from the doorway. Frank Mercer, Harrison's most loyal right hand, appeared with a face as cold as stone, though his eyes were sharp as blades, taking in everything. "The medical team has arrived, Mrs. Monica. Please step aside so the medical team can enter." Frank's voice was calm yet carried an authority that could not be challenged. Monica was forced to stop. She let out a scornful huff and stepped back, though her eyes still burned into Penny with pure hatred. Frank's gaze flicked to the blood streaming down Penny's cheek, and his eyes darkened for a fleeting moment. He committed every detail to memory, every wound, every drop of blood. The medical team entered, in truth Harrison's private doctor and trusted staff who had been arranged in advance. They lifted Harrison onto a stretcher and swiftly carried him out of the room. Penny remained kneeling there, holding Noah and Lily tightly in her arms. A faint red stain marked the shoulder of her blue uniform from where she had held the children close. But Penny's focus was only on them. Lily looked up, her red-rimmed eyes fixed on the cut on Penny's cheek. "Penny, you're bleeding!" Penny forced a smile, though her cheek burned as if set on fire. "It is all right, little princess. Just a small scratch. It will heal by tomorrow. Penny promises." 30 minutes later, the private medical suite inside the Cole mansion was steeped in a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. Harrison lay on the hospital bed, his eyes still closed, his breathing steady as though he had sunk into a deep and dreamless sleep. The family's private physician stood beside him, nodded to Frank, and spoke loudly enough for anyone outside the door to hear that Mr. Cole was stable. His vital signs were normal. It appeared to be nothing more than a temporary fainting spell brought on by overwork. The door flew open. Monica swept in like a storm, her face flawlessly made up again after her earlier fury, now arranged into a picture of perfect distress. Tears streamed down her carefully powdered cheeks as she rushed to the bedside. "My love," she cried out, her voice trembling with emotion. "I was so scared. I thought I had lost you. Don't ever frighten me like that again." Monica threw herself into Harrison's arms, crocodile tears soaking into his shoulder. She buried her face against his chest, her shoulders shaking as if overcome with sobs. A flawless performance, if no one knew the truth. But Harrison knew. Harrison slowly opened his eyes. Not the weak flutter of a man just regaining consciousness after a fainting spell, but a gaze sharp and cold, like a blade being drawn from its sheath. He did not return Monica's embrace. He did not lift his arms to hold her. He did not stroke her hair in comfort. He simply lay there, staring up at the ceiling, his eyes glacial and distant. Monica lifted her head, the smile still lingering on her lips, though unease began to creep in when she saw his expression. "My love? Are you all right? Can you hear me?" Harrison turned his head slowly to look at her. Silence stretched between them. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The smile on Monica's lips faded, replaced by a flicker of anxiety. Then Harrison spoke, his voice low and slow, like thunder rolling in the distance before a storm. "Who did you call first when you saw me fall, Monica?" The question struck like a fist. Monica blinked and drew back slightly. "Of course the emergency services," she stammered. "I was so worried about you. I was afraid something would happen, so I—" Harrison sat up, every movement deliberate and threatening, like a wolf rising from a long winter sleep. "The lawyer or the doctor? Monica?" he asked again, his tone unwavering. "Which one were you going to call?" Monica's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes widened in horror as she understood the meaning behind the question. Harrison rose from the bed, tall and imposing like a tower collapsing down upon her. He stepped forward, each slow, heavy footstep sounding like a sentence being pronounced. "I heard everything, Monica. The prenuptial agreement, the transfer of property. Your greed knows no bounds. Would you like me to repeat it?" Monica staggered backward, her eyes darting like a trapped animal searching for escape. "You misunderstood," she screamed in desperation. "I was just anxious and said foolish things. I love you. Everything I do is for you." Harrison did not stop. He kept advancing, his gaze burning into her. Monica turned in another direction, seeking an exit, and then she saw Penny standing in the hallway beyond the glass panel, the 2 children still clinging tightly to her. "It is all her fault, that servant," Monica shrieked as though grasping at a final lifeline. "She harmed you. She made you fall. She is trying to seduce you to seize your fortune. Can you not see? She is the one who—" Enough. The single word cracked from Harrison's mouth like a gunshot, cutting through every excuse Monica tried to make. "Frank," Harrison called without even looking at her again. "Remove her from my house. Right now." Frank appeared at the door as though he had been waiting all along. 2 large bodyguards behind him. Monica screamed like a maddened animal. "You can't do this. You need my family. The Cole and Hale alliance. Without us, others will swallow you whole." Harrison turned to look at her one last time, his eyes stripped of all emotion. Tell your father the alliance ends tonight, and tell him that if he wants war, I am ready." The two bodyguards seized Monica by the arms and dragged her out of the room. She struggled wildly, her voice never ceasing its shrill cries. But as she was pulled across the hallway, her eyes locked onto Penny holding the children. Hatred blazed in Monica's gaze. "You," she screamed with every ounce of venom she possessed. "This is all your fault. You seduced him. You stole my place. I swear I will destroy you. You will have no place left in this world. And those two brats," she hissed through clenched teeth at Noah and Lily, who hid trembling behind Penny. "I will make them pay." One by one, Penny wrapped her arms tighter around the children, offering no reply. Yet in her eyes, for the first time, true fear appeared. Not fear for herself, but fear for the two small, fragile lives shaking in her embrace. The mansion doors slammed shut behind Monica, cutting off her screams abruptly. Silence descended upon the estate like a heavy blanket. Harrison stood by the window of the medical suite, gazing into the darkness outside. The car carrying Monica sped away, its red taillights glowing like demonic eyes retreating into the night. Frank stepped up behind his employer, waiting. Harrison did not turn around as his voice broke the darkness. "Increase security. Double it. The Hale family will not let this go. They will strike back." Frank nodded. "I understand, sir. And Miss Penny and the children?" Harrison was silent for a long moment before answering. "Protect them. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anyone who lays a hand on them will have to step over my dead body first." The night had grown very late. The Cole mansion lay wrapped in a hush after the storm that had torn through it. The only sound the steady ticking of the wall clock, measured and patient, like the heartbeat of some great beast finally at rest. Noah and Lily had been put to bed long ago, exhausted by too many upheavals in a single night. But Harrison did not sleep. He sat in his study, the glow of the desk lamp casting long shadows across his angular face as he sank deep into thought. At last, he ordered Frank to bring Penny to him. Penny entered the study with a trace of worry in her step, though she tried to steady herself. She had changed out of the blood-stained uniform into a simple white blouse and black trousers. The scratches on her cheek had been covered with a few strips of medical gauze, yet the dark red stain still showed faintly through the white fabric. She stood before Harrison's desk, her hands gripping the hem of her shirt, her head slightly bowed out of habit, the posture of someone long accustomed to standing at the bottom of the social order. But she was not trembling. Harrison watched her in silence, and for the first time in the 6 months she had worked in this house, he truly looked at her. Not as one looks at a servant, an employee, a piece of the furnishings in a luxurious estate, but as one looks at another human being. He saw her slight frame, yet her back was straight, unbent even while standing before the most powerful Mafia boss on the east coast of the United States. He saw the dark circles beneath her brown eyes, born of worry and sleepless nights, yet within them there still burned something he rarely saw in anyone: resolve, courage, and the bandage on her cheek, quiet evidence of the sacrifice she had made for his family. "Are you not afraid of me?" Harrison asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Penny lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. She did not look away as most people did when confronted with his gaze. "Sir, I am afraid," she answered honestly. "You are the most powerful man I have ever met in my life." Harrison tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "Then why did you dare argue with Monica? Dare to remain at my side when she ordered you away? Dare to take the blow meant for my son?" Penny fell silent for a long moment, as though searching for words she had never spoken aloud before. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "Because I am more afraid of something happening to Noah and Lily than I am of anything happening to myself, sir." Harrison frowned. It was not the answer he was accustomed to hearing from employees. They usually spoke of money, of keeping their jobs, of fear of dismissal. No one ever spoke of loving children who were not their own blood. "Why?" he pressed. "Why do you care for them so much? They are not your children. You are only a hired nanny." Penny looked down at the floor, her fingers tightening around the fabric of her blouse. When she raised her head again, something had changed in her eyes. Pain, a pain long buried now rising to the surface. "Because if something happened to you," she said, her voice lowering as if she feared hearing herself say it, "Noah and Lily would be orphans, like I once was." Harrison went still. "I lost my parents when I was 5 years old," Penny continued, her gaze drifting far away as though she were staring into the past. A car accident. I was the only survivor. After that, there were 14 years in an orphanage. 14 years waiting for a family that never came. She paused, swallowing hard. When I was 19, a couple said they wanted to adopt me. I thought it was a dream come true. Her voice trembled, yet she pressed on. But they sold me to a human trafficking ring. A chill ran down Harrison's spine. He had witnessed many dark things in the underworld, but hearing this story from the mouth of someone who had endured it was something else entirely. I was held for 8 months. Penny went on, her voice nearly a whisper. I tried to escape many times, but I failed every time. The last time, I almost gave up completely. This scar. She touched her left wrist lightly, where a thin line lay hidden beneath her sleeve. It is what remains from the night I thought I could not endure any longer. The study fell into a heavy silence. Harrison looked at the young woman before him with entirely different eyes. No longer the gaze of an employer toward a servant, but of one human being toward another who had walked through hell and survived. But I am still alive. Penny lifted her head, and now something stronger than pain shone in her eyes. Willpower. I escaped, and from that day on, I swore to myself that I would never allow any child to feel as alone as I once did. Never allow any child to know the terror of abandonment the way I did. That is why I love Noah and Lily, because I know what it means to lose your parents, and I will do everything in my power to make sure they never have to feel that. Harrison was silent for a very long time. He looked at Penny and, for the first time, saw himself in her. 2 people marked by wounded pasts, 2 people the world had pushed to the brink, who had clawed their own way back. 2 lonely souls, searching for something to hold on to. From this day forward, he said at last, his voice gentler than it had ever been, you are the official housekeeper and primary nanny of the Cole family. Your salary will be increased 5-fold. But Penny shook her head. Sir, I don't need money. Harrison's brow furrowed in surprise. Then what do you need? Penny met his eyes, her gaze so clear and sincere that it felt as though someone had pressed a hand against the long frozen heart of the Mafia boss and squeezed gently. Let me stay with the children, she said. That is enough. Then she bowed her head and left the room, leaving Harrison seated there with a strange sensation rising in his chest, a feeling he had believed had died long ago. Frank entered moments later, but Harrison lifted a hand to stop him before he could speak. Protect her, Harrison said, his voice no longer the cold command it usually was, but carrying something else entirely. Protect her the way you protect the children. Dozens of miles north of the Cole estate, the Hale mansion simmered in an atmosphere so taut it felt ready to explode. Wesley Hale stood in the center of his opulent living room, a glass of expensive whiskey trembling in his hand with barely restrained fury. His face was flushed a deep, dangerous red, the veins at his temples throbbing visibly. He dares to humiliate my daughter? Wesley roared and hurled the glass against the opposite wall. Crystal shattered, amber liquid splashing across polished stone and silk wallpaper. He dares to throw the daughter of Wesley Hale out of his house like a stray dog? Dares to break an alliance our 2 families have built over 10 years? Monica knelt at her father's feet, her eyes red-rimmed, though no longer from wounded sorrow. Those tears now were born of hatred, of vengeance, simmering and waiting for its hour. He will pay, father, she said, her voice cold as winter steel. Harrison Cole will kneel before the Hale family, and I know exactly where to begin. With that servant, Penny. She is his weakness. Wesley stilled and looked down at his daughter with calculating eyes. Go on. Monica rose, smoothing the creases from her expensive dress. I have watched carefully for a long time. Harrison Cole may be ruthless with the world, but he is vulnerable where those 2 children are concerned. And that maid is the only person they trust completely. Strike her, and you strike his heart. Wesley nodded slowly, a cruel smile spreading across his lips. Then this is the plan. First, we spread rumors that Harrison Cole is losing his mind, that he no longer has the capacity to lead his empire. I will contact his underground partners and incite them to rebellion. Monica continued smoothly. And the final step, we take the children. Harrison will kneel to save his own blood. He will sign everything over to the Hale family. The Cole empire will belong to us. But how do we get close to the children? Wesley asked. After last night, he will certainly double security. Monica smiled, her eyes flashing with cunning light. I have someone inside his house, father. Someone no one suspects. She will provide every piece of information we need. The children's schedule, gaps in the security system, everything. Wesley regarded his daughter with satisfaction. Excellent. Who is it? Monica only smiled and did not answer. You will know when the time comes. For now, I need to make a call. Meanwhile, back at the Cole mansion, Harrison sat in his study with Frank, reviewing the security footage from the previous night. The screen displayed Monica seizing Penny's hair, slapping her, raking her nails across her cheek. It showed Noah running forward to kick Monica's leg. It showed Penny shielding the boy with her own body. Harrison's jaw tightened, his teeth grinding together. He had witnessed it firsthand, yet seeing it again ignited his fury anew. Sir, Frank spoke quietly, I have bad news. Harrison turned toward his most trusted lieutenant. There is a traitor inside this house, Frank said. Someone has been in contact with the Hale family, providing information about the family's daily schedule. I have not yet identified who it is, but it is certainly one of the staff. Harrison's eyes darkened. Find out who it is, but don't act yet. Feed them false information. I want to know what they are planning. Frank nodded. Understood, sir. The next morning, in the spacious kitchen of the Cole mansion, Penny was preparing breakfast for Noah and Lily when Paige entered. Paige was another member of the household staff, 25 years old, with a pretty face and a smile that rarely left her lips. She had worked there nearly a year and had become Penny's closest friend. Hey Penny, is your cheek feeling better? Paige asked with concern, glancing at the bandage. Penny offered a small smile. It is better. Just a scratch. Paige nodded. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, she asked in a voice carefully casual. By the way, are you taking the kids anywhere tomorrow? The park, maybe? Penny did not suspect a thing and answered freely. Yes, probably. Noah and Lily love the swings. They have been cooped up inside for days. They are restless. Paige nodded, but her eyes flicked briefly toward the phone resting on the kitchen counter. The glance lasted less than a second, but it was enough for Harrison to catch as he passed by the doorway. He did not stop. He said nothing. He simply continued walking as though he had seen nothing at all. But his eyes narrowed slightly, and his mind began fitting scattered pieces into place. That night, after the mansion had fallen asleep, the security cameras recorded Paige slipping quietly to a far corner of the back garden, where no lights shone. She pulled her phone from her pocket, looked around once, then quickly typed a message to someone. The glow of the screen illuminated her face, and in that fleeting moment, the innocence she usually wore vanished, replaced by an expression no one had ever seen before. The following morning, Frank set a laptop before Harrison. On the screen was that very footage. Paige, Harrison said, his voice steady but his eyes icy enough to chill the room. She is Penny's closest friend, is she not? Yes, sir, Frank replied, and that is precisely why she is the most dangerous. No one suspects a best friend. Harrison rose and walked to the window overlooking the garden below. Through the glass he could see the children's room on the lower floor, warm light spilling gently into the night. Penny sat beside the bed, reading a fairy tale to Noah and Lily. The two children curled against her, their eyes drooping with sleep yet struggling to stay open to hear the end of the story. It was a scene of peace so fragile it ached, poised on the edge of an approaching storm. I will protect them, Harrison murmured to himself, his hand curling into a fist. Even if I must stand against the whole world, even if I must burn the Hale family to its very foundations. 2 weeks had passed since that fateful night. Life inside the Cole mansion had gradually returned to normal, or at least it appeared that way on the surface. Harrison still went to work, still ran his empire, but his eyes were constantly alert, like a wolf standing guard over its pack. And today, after many days of pleading from the children, Penny had finally been allowed to take Noah and Lily to the park near the house. It was a beautiful afternoon, the sky a flawless stretch of blue without a single cloud. The park was crowded with families out with their children, laughter and conversation drifting through the warm air. 2 of Harrison's bodyguards followed Penny and the children, keeping enough distance so the little ones would not feel confined, yet close enough to observe everything around them. Noah ran straight to the swings, his small legs darting swiftly over the green grass. Penny, push me, he shouted with excitement. Lily clung to Penny's hand and tugged her toward the swing beside her brother. Me too. I want to fly high like a bird. Penny smiled, the first truly unguarded smile since that terrible night. She helped Lily onto the swing and began to push gently. Higher, Penny, Lily squealed, her golden hair streaming in the wind. I want to touch the clouds. Careful, little princess, Penny laughed softly. The clouds are very high, but Penny will try. She pushed a little harder, listening to Lily's bright laughter ring out like wind chimes. Beside them, Noah pumped his legs, trying to swing higher than his sister. It was a rare moment of peace, a moment Penny wished she could hold forever. But storms never announce themselves. A black van screeched to a halt along the curb near the park. At the same time, a loud crash echoed from the parking area. A gray sedan had rammed straight into the bodyguard's car. What the hell? One guard turned and saw his vehicle crumpled from the impact. Both men immediately ran toward it to assess the damage, professional instinct pulling them away from their primary duty for a few fatal seconds. And that was all the attackers needed. Two men dressed in black burst from the van, moving like shadows toward the swings. Penny sensed the danger in a heartbeat. The protective instinct forged through years of surviving hell surged to life. She rushed forward, yanking Noah off the swing and grabbing Lily, pulling both children into her arms. Noah, Lily, hold on to Penny. One of the men reached out to grab Lily, trying to pull her away, but Penny tightened her grip, placing herself between them so he couldn't touch the child. He was 3 times stronger than she was, but Penny refused to let go. Even as a sharp pain flared across her forehead from a heavy blow, she tightened her arms, shielding the children with her own body. She tightened her arms around the children, her body curling over them like a living shield against the attackers. Help! Somebody help! Penny cried out with every ounce of breath she had left. They are kidnapping children. Noah sobbed, his tiny hands clutching at Penny's neck. Penny, you are hurt. There is blood. Lily cried out, burying her face against Penny's chest for safety. I'm scared, Penny, she whispered, her small voice trembling. Penny's cries drew the attention of those nearby. A mother shrieked in horror. A man pulled out his phone and called the police. The crowd began to stir, moving closer. The 2 bodyguards finally grasped what was happening and turned back, running toward the swings with guns in hand. Retreat! One of the attackers snarled when he saw the situation turning against them. They released Penny and bolted toward the van, which was already idling. The vehicle sped away at terrifying speed, disappearing around the corner within seconds. Penny remained on the ground, blood flowing down from her forehead across her cheek, yet her arms were still locked around the children. She did not let go. Beaten, injured, bleeding, she still did not let go. Noah lifted his tear-filled eyes to her face, then threw his arms around her. Penny saved us, he sobbed. Penny is a superhero. Penny is stronger than the bad men. Lily still trembled in her embrace, but she had stopped crying. I was so scared, she whispered. But when Penny is here, I am not scared anymore. When Penny is here, I am safe. Penny forced a smile, though. Her head throbbed as if split by an axe. Penny will always protect you, she whispered, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Always, no matter what happens. One of the bodyguard's phones rang. His face went pale when he saw the name on the screen. He answered with trembling fingers. Before he could speak, Harrison's voice came through the line, cold as ice and edged with lethal intent. What happened? The guard swallowed and stammered out the report. Someone attacked the children. Miss Penny was injured protecting them. The attackers escaped. The children are safe because of her. Silence stretched from the other end of the call, a silence more terrifying than any outburst of rage. And then Harrison spoke, only one sentence before ending the call. I am coming home now. Harrison's car screeched to a halt at the gates of the mansion, tires grinding against the gravel. He was out before the driver could open the door, long strides carrying him across the courtyard and into the house. Frank, standing at the entrance, saw his employer from a distance, and for the first time in 20 years at Harrison Cole's side, he witnessed something close to panic on the face of the man who was always as cold as ice. Harrison's gaze swept across the living room and stopped at the corner sofa. Penny sat there, her head carefully wrapped in white gauze, faint traces of dried blood still marking her temple, yet she paid no attention to her own injury. She held Noah and Lily in her arms, her voice soft as she told them a fairy tale to help them forget the terror they had just endured. Daddy. Noah was the first to see Harrison. He sprang from Penny's lap and ran toward his father, Lily close behind. Daddy, you are home. Bad men tried to take us. They were big and mean. Noah spoke in a rush, his eyes still red from crying. But Penny fought them, Daddy. Penny did not let them take us. Penny's head hurts, Lily added anxiously. There was so much blood. Daddy, is Penny going to be all right? Please make her better. Harrison dropped to his knees and gathered his children into his arms, feeling their small bodies trembling against him. His heart clenched at the thought of what might have happened if Penny had not been there, if she had not risked her life to protect them. He kissed each child's forehead and murmured words of comfort, yet his eyes never left Penny for even a second. She remained seated, quietly watching the reunion with a tired but contented smile on her lips, as if her own injury did not matter, as if the children's safety was enough. Harrison set the children down and told them to go with Uncle Frank for a little while so he could speak with Penny. Once the children had been led away, he stepped in front of her, and then he did something he had never done for anyone in his life. He lowered himself onto one knee so that his eyes were level with hers. Penny's eyes widened in shock. This was Harrison Cole, the most powerful mafia boss on the East Coast of the United States, a man before whom the entire underworld bowed, and now he was kneeling before her, an ordinary housemaid. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked, his voice trembling in a way he did not even realize. Penny forced a reassuring smile. "I am fine, sir. The children are unharmed. That is what matters most." "You were injured," Harrison said, his gaze lingering on the bandage on her forehead before drifting to the faint mark still visible on her cheek from Monica's nails. "You were hurt protecting my children." Penny lowered her eyes. "They are my children, too," she said without thinking, then immediately realized her slip. A flush rose to her cheeks as she hurried to correct herself. I did not mean to." Harrison looked at her for a long, searching moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand what you meant," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "And you are right. They are your children, too." The air in the room felt thick, almost tangible. Harrison lifted his hand and gently touched the edge of the bandage on her forehead. She flinched slightly at the unexpected contact, but did not pull away. "Does it hurt?" he asked, nearly in a whisper. "It is nothing," Penny replied, repeating the familiar phrase she had said so many times in her life. "Just a small—" "Don't say it is nothing," Harrison interrupted, his eyes steady and serious. "You deserve to be cared for. You deserve to have someone worry about you. Never think that your pain doesn't matter." Silence fell between them. They looked at one another in a moment that seemed to stretch without end. For the first time, they were not looking at each other as employer and servant, as mafia boss and nanny. They were simply two human beings, two wounded souls trying to understand one another. Harrison rose to his feet, the fragile moment passing, though its echo lingered in the air. His voice grew firm again, but it was no longer cold. "From now on, you will not leave this mansion unless I am with you." Penny opened her mouth to protest. "But sir, the children need to go outside. They need fresh air. They need—" "This is not a request," Harrison cut in, though his tone softened slightly. "It is an order, and a promise. I will not let anyone lay a hand on you or the children again, no matter the cost." Penny looked at him and understood. This was not control, not confinement. It was protection. The protection of a man too familiar with loss, unwilling to lose anyone else. She nodded slowly. "I understand, sir." Harrison turned to Frank, who stood at the doorway. "Find out who leaked the park schedule," he ordered, his eyes darkening with cold, lethal intent. "Someone in this house betrayed us. I want to know who." Frank inclined his head. "I will find out, sir." "And prepare," Harrison continued, his voice like the low growl of a wolf before battle. "It is time we strike back. The Hale family wants war. They will have war." 1 week after the attack at the park, Harrison convened a secret meeting with all of his allied crime bosses. The meeting room lay deep beneath the basement of a luxury hotel, a property entirely owned by Harrison, though no one knew it. 12 of the most powerful men on the East Coast of the United States sat around a long oak table, the tension in the air so sharp it could have been sliced with a blade. Harrison stood at the head of the table, his eyes cold as steel as they swept across each face. Then he signaled for Frank to turn on the recorder. Monica's voice filled the room, clear and cutting. "Father, call the lawyer. I mean the doctor. Has the prenuptial agreement been signed? Has the property transfer been completed? If he dies before the wedding, what do I get?" Then Wesley Hale's voice followed, discussing plans to seize the Cole empire through marriage, to turn Harrison into a puppet in the hands of the Hale family, to swallow each of his allies one by one once control had been secured. When the recording ended, silence fell heavily across the room. The bosses exchanged looks of disbelief. Wesley Hale. One silver-haired man spoke first, anger thick in his voice. He planned to devour all of us? To use his daughter to take Cole, and then who would be next? The alliance with Hale ends today, Harrison declared, his voice steady and unyielding. From this moment on, anyone who stands with him stands against me. The men nodded in agreement. No one wished to become the next prey of the Hale family. No one wanted to gamble their future on a man willing to stab his allies in the back. Wesley Hale was officially isolated within the underworld. That evening, the Cole mansion rested in a rare and fragile peace. After so many storms, this was the first quiet moment the small family had known. Harrison sat on the large sofa in the living room. Noah curled against his left side, while Lily leaned her head on his right shoulder. Penny sat in the armchair opposite, a fairy tale book open across her lap, her voice soft as a lullaby, as she read about a princess and a brave knight. Harrison was not truly listening to the story. He was watching the way Penny shifted her tone for each character, the way she smiled when the children giggled, the way the warm golden lamplight illuminated her face and made her brown eyes shimmer as though filled with 1,000 stars. And he realized this was a sight he had never known in all his 36 years of life. A real family. The story ended, and Penny closed the book. Lily looked up at her father with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, in the story there is a mother. The princess has a mother, and the prince has a mother too. Why does our house not have a mother, Daddy?" Harrison went still. His daughter's innocent question pierced his heart like an arrow. He had prepared for many things in life, but not for this. Before he could find an answer, Noah spoke up. "I want Penny to be our mother," he declared boldly. "Penny is better than Aunt Monica. Penny loves me. Penny tells stories. Penny protects me from bad people. I want Penny to be my mother." Lily nodded eagerly. "Me too. Penny should be our mother." The air in the room shifted. Penny flushed crimson and lowered her gaze to the book in her hands, as though it were the most fascinating object in the world. "Children, I am only—" she faltered, unsure what to say. Harrison looked at her, his gaze heavy with unspoken meaning, yet he remained silent. The fragile moment stretched, filled with words unsaid and emotions not yet dared. Then Harrison's phone vibrated, shattering the stillness. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered. Frank's voice came through the line, urgent and tense. "Sir, it is critical. They are coming. Tonight." Harrison rose to his feet, his expression transforming in an instant. The gentle father vanished, replaced by the cold Mafia boss, the wolf prepared to tear apart anyone who threatened his pack. He turned to Penny, his voice firm yet threaded with concern. "Take the children to the safe room. Now. No questions, no hesitation. Go." Penny did not argue. She understood the gravity of the situation from the look in his eyes alone. She lifted Lily into her arms, grasped Noah's hand, and hurried toward the staircase leading to the basement where a reinforced safe room had been built with steel walls and a bulletproof door. Harrison slipped on his jacket and checked the handgun at his side. He watched the three figures disappear behind the basement door and spoke loudly enough for Penny to hear. "No matter what happens, don't open the door. Except for me, no one else. Do you understand?" Penny turned to look at him, her eyes filled with worry yet steady with trust. She nodded. "I understand. Be careful." The steel door shut with a heavy final sound. Darkness began to gather around the Cole mansion, and the storm was coming. Late at night, the Cole mansion sank into darkness when the lights suddenly went out. Only the red emergency lights blinked along the corridors, like veins pulsing through the body of a wounded beast. And then the gunfire began. Sharp cracks tore through the night, echoing from the direction of the main gate. There were screams, pounding footsteps, the shattering crash of glass. The Hale men had come, numerous and ruthless, surrounding the mansion from every side like a pack of starving wolves. Harrison's men fought fiercely outside, but a smaller group exploited the chaos and slipped inside. Down in the basement, inside the safe room with steel walls thick as a man's hand, Penny held Noah and Lily tightly in the corner. The two children trembled like fledglings battered by a storm, their faces buried against her chest, their hands clamped over their ears to block out the terrifying sounds above. "Penny, there are gunshots," Noah whispered, his voice quivering on the edge of tears. "Is Daddy all right? Will the bad men catch him? I am scared," Lily sobbed. "I am so scared, Penny." Penny drew in a deep breath, forcing down the fear rising inside her own chest. She knew she had to be strong. For the children. Always for the children. "Let Penny tell you a story," she said, her voice gentle and steady, though her heart pounded wildly. Once upon a time, there was the strongest wolf in the forest. That wolf lived in a large cave with 2 small wolf cubs he loved more than his own life. Noah lifted his tear-stained face to look at her. The wolf protected his pack from every enemy. Penny continued, smoothing his hair. No wild beast could defeat him, because he fought with all his heart. "The wolf is Daddy, right, Penny?" Noah asked, hope trembling in his voice. Penny nodded, offering a soft, reassuring smile. "Yes, and Daddy will win. Daddy always wins, because he is the strongest wolf in the world." But at that very moment, a sound made Penny's heart nearly stop. The soft electronic beep of a keypad outside the basement door. Someone was entering the code. Penny froze, pulling the children closer. "That is impossible," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the steel door as it slowly began to open. Only Mr. Harrison and a few of his most trusted men knew the code. There could not possibly be anyone else. The door opened, red light spilling in from the hallway, and the person who stepped inside was not Harrison. Paige stood there, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. She could not meet Penny's eyes. Her gaze darted nervously like that of a criminal awaiting final judgment. "Paige," Penny breathed, unable to believe what she was seeing. "What are you doing here? How did you open the door?" "I am sorry, Penny," Paige sobbed, her voice breaking apart. "They threatened my family. My mother is in the hospital. She needs money for surgery. They said they would kill her if I did not cooperate. I had no other choice. I am sorry. I am truly sorry." Penny looked at the friend she had once trusted, the one she had confided in, the one she had considered a sister. The sting of betrayal cut through her like a blade piercing straight into her heart. "Paige," she whispered, anguish filling her voice. "You sold us out." A cold laugh echoed from behind Paige, slicing through every word of explanation. "Thank you, Paige. You may collect your payment now." Monica Hale stepped into the room, a triumphant smile spreading across her painted red lips. She wore a fitted black outfit like an assassin from a film, her eyes sharp and merciless as they fixed on Penny with undisguised hatred. Paige lowered her head, brushed past Monica, and fled without daring to look back. She vanished into the shadowed hallway like a guilty ghost. Monica advanced into the room, 2 towering henchmen behind her like bears. She glanced around before her gaze settled on the corner where Penny stood holding the children. Her smile widened. "Found you," Monica said with relish. 2 little rats and 1 foolish servant. Easier than I expected." Noah and Lily screamed at the sight of Monica, memories of that previous night crashing back in terror. They clung to Penny as though she were the only lifeline in a raging sea. "Grab the brats," Monica ordered her men, her voice icy and merciless. "Harrison Cole will kneel to save his children. He will sign everything over to the Hale family. The Cole empire will belong to us." The 2 henchmen stepped forward, arms reaching to seize the children. But Penny rose to her feet, placing herself squarely between them and the children. The fear was gone from her eyes now. Only resolve remained. Only the iron will of a woman ready to die to protect the children she loved. "If you want to touch them," she said, her voice clear and unwavering in the steel-lined room, "you will have to step over my dead body first." Monica let out a sharp, scornful laugh at Penny's declaration of defiance, the sound echoing through the underground room like the cry of a crow in the dead of night. She walked forward step by deliberate step, the heels of her shoes striking the concrete floor in a steady rhythm, like a countdown to an execution. "You? Stop me?" Monica sneered. "You are just a servant. Remember that. Trash someone picked up to scrub floors and wash dishes. Who do you think you are to stand in my way?" Penny did not retreat a single inch. She stood there, small in stature yet steady as a stone against a raging current, shielding the trembling children behind her. "And you are only a loser trying to salvage what you have already lost," Penny replied, her voice astonishingly calm. "Mr. Harrison threw you out. The entire underworld has turned its back on your family. You have lost, Monica. You simply refuse to admit it." A flash of murderous fury ignited in Monica's eyes. No one dared speak to her that way, especially not a lowly servant. She raised her hand and struck Penny across the face. The blow landed on the same cheek that still bore the faint scar from the previous night, reopening the barely healed wound, pain flaring like fire beneath the skin. But Penny did not fall. Her head snapped to the side, yet her feet remained planted. Slowly she turned back, a thin line of blood slipping from the corner of her mouth, her gaze unshaken. "Do you think you have already won?" Penny said, her voice rough but steady. "Harrison will find you, and when he does, you will understand what the greatest mistake of your life truly is." Monica burst into laughter, the sound ricocheting off the steel-lined walls. "When he does?" she shrieked with savage delight. "He will kneel to save his children. He will sign every asset over to the Hale family. The Cole Empire will belong to us. That has been the goal from the very beginning, you foolish girl." Penny looked at her for a long moment, then asked quietly, almost gently, "You never loved him, did you?" Monica stopped and stared at Penny as though she had just heard the most absurd question imaginable. "Love?" she scoffed. "This is the underworld, child. There is no love here. There is only power, money, and those clever enough to seize it. Harrison Cole has all of it, and I should have owned it all. Him, his children, his empire, everything should have been mine." Penny shook her head slowly, fear gone from her eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like pity. "You are wrong, Monica," she said softly. "Love exists. Real love exists. It is in Noah's eyes when he looks at his father, in Lily's smile when she is held in his arms, in the way Mr. Harrison protects the people he loves. And that is something you will never have, because you don't understand it, because your heart is empty." "Shut up!" Monica screamed, her face flushed with rage. "What do you know about love? You are nothing but a servant, trash, a nobody." She turned sharply to her two henchmen and barked in a shrill command. "Drag her out. Take the brats. I don't want to see her face anymore." The two men advanced, their hands as large as paddles, reaching for Penny. She stepped back but did not break her shield over the children, knowing she could not match them in strength. Yet she would not let go. Even if it meant dying, she would not let go. "Noah, Lily." Penny turned to the sobbing children behind her, her voice tender though thick with emotion. "Close your eyes, my loves. Penny loves you. Always." The children cried out and clung to her legs as though she might vanish. "Don't go, Penny," Noah screamed. "I don't want Penny to get hurt," Lily sobbed. One of the henchmen's hands was about to seize Penny when a gunshot exploded through the enclosed space of the basement, a deafening crack that reverberated against steel and concrete. But it did not come from Monica or her men. The henchman let out a sharp cry and collapsed as the shot struck his shoulder, rendering him unable to fight back. He was not dead, but he could no longer fight. Monica spun around, eyes wide with horror. Penny turned as well toward the doorway, where a dark figure stood framed in the entrance. The red emergency light from the hallway cast a long, imposing shadow. The gun in the figure's hand still smoked. The shadow stepped forward into the red glow of the emergency lights, and the face of Harrison Cole came into view. His suit was streaked with dust and marked by smears of blood, his hair disheveled, yet his eyes were sharp and cold, like a blade freshly honed. The gun in his hand still smoked from the shot that had torn through the henchman's shoulder. His gaze swept the room and came to rest on Penny and the two children sheltering behind her. And in that single heartbeat, something softened in those steel-gray eyes. "They are safe." She protected them. Frank Mercer appeared just behind Harrison, swiftly subduing the remaining henchman who had been reaching for his weapon. He twisted the man's arm behind his back and forced him to the floor with the ease of a puppeteer cutting a string. "Paige has confessed everything," Frank said in a voice devoid of warmth. "We knew you were here. We knew the plan. We knew who was behind it." Monica retreated until her back struck the cold concrete wall. There was nowhere left to run, no henchman left to shield her. She watched Harrison approach, panic flooding her face, and then she did the only thing she had ever truly mastered. She performed. "Harrison!" she cried, her voice quivering with feigned anguish. "My love, I love you. It is all a misunderstanding. My father forced me. I had no choice. You have to believe me." Harrison continued forward, each step slow and deliberate, like a panther closing in on its prey. "Don't insult my intelligence, Monica," he said, his voice as cold as winter steel. "I have heard enough lies from you to know when you are acting." Monica's face drained of color, yet she clung to her act. "My love, You had one chance." Harrison cut her off, standing before her like a judge delivering a sentence. "That night, when I lay at the foot of the stairs." If you had called for help instead of calling a lawyer, if you had worried about my life instead of my assets, if there had been even a trace of humanity in your heart, things might have been different. I might have forgiven you. I might have given you a second chance. But you made your choice, and this is the consequence. The mask fell completely from Monica's face. She no longer pretended. What remained was madness, the fury of a defeated woman who refused to accept defeat. "It is all because of that servant," she screamed, pointing straight at Penny. "You chose her instead of me. What is she? No money, no status, no family name, nothing. She is nothing but trash you picked up. How could you choose her over me?" Harrison turned his head toward Penny. She stood there, dried blood on her cheek, hair tangled, clothes rumpled and torn, yet she stood upright, still shielding the children. Still the final wall between them and danger. "She has something you will never have," Harrison said, his voice softening as he looked at Penny. "A real heart." His phone vibrated. He glanced down at the screen, read the message, and a flicker of satisfaction passed through his eyes. "Wesley Hale has just been arrested by the Federal Bureau of Investigation," he said aloud, making sure Monica heard every word. "All the evidence we provided has been confirmed. Money laundering, smuggling, bribery of officials, everything. The Hale empire ends tonight." Monica collapsed. Her legs gave way and she crumpled onto the cold concrete floor. "No," she whispered, her voice broken. "That can't be. Father, and you as well," Harrison said, turning away. Frank signaled, and 2 guards stepped in to place handcuffs around Monica's wrists. She screamed, wept, pleaded, but no one listened. Her cries echoed down the corridor as she was dragged away, fading into nothing when the steel door slammed shut. The darkness swallowed the defeated. Silence settled once more over the mansion. The battle was over. "Daddy?" Noah was the first to break the quiet. He ran into Harrison's arms, Lily right behind him. "Daddy saved us. Daddy beat the bad people. Daddy is a real superhero." Harrison knelt and gathered his children close, and for the first time in many years, tears slid down the cheeks of the most powerful Mafia boss on the east coast of the United States. They were not the tears of weakness. They were the tears of a father who had nearly lost everything, and now held the most precious parts of his life against his chest. "Penny saved us too," Lily said, lifting her face and looking toward Penny, who stood a few steps away. "Penny covered me. Penny did not let the bad people take me." Harrison raised his eyes to find Penny. She stood there with blood on her cheek, her lips swollen, her hair disheveled. Yet in his eyes she had never been more beautiful, beautiful with the quiet strength of a woman willing to sacrifice everything to protect the children she loved. Harrison rose and walked toward her. She looked up at him, uncertain what to say, and then, without a single word, he pulled her into his arms. It was a tight embrace, an embrace filled with gratitude, with relief, and with emotions neither of them had yet dared to speak aloud. Penny stiffened for a breath, then slowly relaxed, resting her head against his shoulder. She felt the steady strength of his heartbeat beneath the fabric of his suit, felt the warmth of his body surrounding her. For the first time in her life, she felt protected. Noah and Lily ran to them and wrapped their arms around both adults. The 4 of them stood there in the cold, dim basement, yet warmer than anywhere else in the world. A family. At last, they had truly become one. 1 month had passed since that night of terror. The Cole mansion had been fully restored, bullet holes patched and painted over, shattered windows replaced with stronger bulletproof glass. No visible trace of the attack remained, as if it had never happened at all. But the people who lived within those walls knew that everything had changed. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating the corridor where Noah and Lily's laughter echoed brightly. The 2 children chased one another, their small feet pounding across the polished wooden floors. Life had returned to normal, but it was a different kind of normal. Harrison Cole had changed. The Mafia boss, who had once been distant and cold, now joined his family for breakfast every day, something that had never happened in the 4 years since the children were born. He came home earlier, often appearing just as Penny prepared to read bedtime stories, and he would sit beside them, listening to every fairy tale as though it were the most important business report in the world. He began steering his empire toward legitimate ventures, leaving the darker remnants to Frank, while focusing on building a cleaner future for his children. One afternoon, Harrison took Noah into the garden to teach him how to kick a soccer ball. Father and son stood on the lush green lawn, the ball rolling back and forth between them. Noah tried to strike it the way his father showed him, but lost his balance and tumbled onto the grass. His laughter rang out clear and bright, and Harrison laughed too, a rare and radiant smile breaking across his usually stern face. Penny stood on the porch, watching the scene with a gentle smile. At that very moment, Harrison looked up and their eyes met. Time seemed to pause in that brief exchange. Then they both quickly looked away, as though caught in something they were not yet ready to name. A few nights later, Penny could not sleep. She went downstairs to brew a pot of chamomile tea and found Harrison already there, seated at the kitchen bar with a glass of water in his hand. He could not sleep either. They did not speak much. They simply sat across from each other beneath the soft golden light, sipping tea and sharing the quiet. But it was not an awkward silence. It was the silence of two people who had weathered a storm together and were now learning how to heal beside one another. A few days later, Lily ran to Harrison with a drawing she had just finished. "This is our house, Daddy," she exclaimed proudly. "There is you, and Noah, and me, and Penny too." Harrison studied the picture. 4 uneven stick figures with round smiling faces beneath a roof and a bright sun shining above. He looked at it for a long time, so long that Lily finally asked if he liked it. He nodded, his voice rough with emotion. "I love it, little princess. It is beautiful." That afternoon, Frank stepped into Harrison's office and found his employer gazing at the drawing pinned to the wall. "Sir," Frank said gently, "it has been a long time since I have seen you smile. In 20 years by your side, this is the first time I have seen you like this." Harrison looked up, a trace of awkwardness in his expression. "It is because of the children," he said, as if explaining something simple. "They are growing up healthy and happy. That makes me happy." Frank studied him, a rare hint of a smile touching his usually solemn face. "Only because of the children?" Harrison did not answer, but his eyes betrayed him as they drifted unconsciously toward the window, where Penny was playing with the children in the garden. Frank nodded quietly and stepped out. "I understand, sir. I understand." Penny had changed as well. She no longer bowed her head when speaking to Harrison, no longer addressed him with the trembling tone of a frightened servant. She still called him sir, but her voice carried warmth now, ease, like the voice of a friend. Sometimes she caught him looking at her, and she would blush and turn away, her heart skipping a beat. The scar on her cheek had faded significantly, almost invisible. Yet Harrison's gaze often lingered there, a silent reminder of the night she had shed blood to protect his family. Harrison stood at the window of his study, looking down at the garden where Penny chased Noah and Lily in a game of hide-and-seek. Laughter rose into the late afternoon sunlight, warm and alive. His hand moved unconsciously to the pocket of his jacket, where a small velvet box had rested for several days now. "Perhaps it is time," he murmured to himself, his gaze soft as it followed the woman below, her smile bright beneath the sun. The Cole mansion overflowed with color and laughter on the 5th birthday of Noah and Lily. Balloons in every shade were strung throughout the house, from the hallway to the living room, from the staircase to the garden outside. A grand castle-shaped cake stood proudly at the center of the table, 5 shimmering candles waiting to be blown out. The celebration was small, only family and a few trusted companions. Frank Mercer stood in the corner of the room, a rare smile touching his lips as he watched the children race about in boundless joy. Noah and Lily were so happy they could not remain still for even a second. They darted from one adult to another, proudly displaying the gifts they had just unwrapped, laughing as they sampled bits of frosting from the cake that Penny allowed them to taste before it was formally cut. Harrison stood watching his children with gentle eyes, a glass of water in one hand, the other lifting now and then to wave whenever they ran past, calling out for him to look at what they had found. After the candles were blown out and the cake sliced, Noah and Lily suddenly ran to Penny, a carefully folded sheet of paper clutched in their small hands. "Penny! Penny!" Noah called, his eyes shining. "This is our present for you. We made it ourselves," Lily added, bouncing with excitement. Penny knelt down to their level, surprised, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the paper. She unfolded it, and her heart seemed to pause for a beat. It was a drawing of 4 stick figures standing side by side in front of a large house. One figure tallest of all, one a little smaller, and 2 tiny ones in between. Beneath the drawing, in uneven, childish letters, were 2 English words Penny herself had taught them. "Our family. This is Daddy," Noah said, pointing to the tallest figure. "This is Penny," he continued, pointing to the one beside it. And this is me and Lily. Because Penny is our family. Lily threw her arms around Penny, her voice so innocent it hurt. Don't ever go away, Penny. Stay with us forever. Tears spilled from Penny's eyes before she could stop them. She gathered the children close, tears of happiness sliding down her cheeks. She could not speak, only nod again and again as she pressed kisses into their hair. Harrison stood a few steps away, witnessing everything. His heart beat faster than usual, warmth spreading through his chest. He looked at the woman who was weeping with joy in his children's embrace, and he knew he could not wait any longer. Late that night, when the party had ended and the children slept peacefully in their room, the mansion fell into quiet. Penny could not sleep. She stepped onto the living room balcony and gazed up at the star-filled sky. The children's drawing was still in her hand, as precious to her as any treasure in the world. Soft footsteps approached behind her. Penny did not need to turn to know who it was. Harrison stepped out onto the balcony beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. For a long moment they stood in silence, looking at the night sky. "Have you ever thought about leaving?" Harrison asked suddenly, his voice low and gentle. Penny turned to him, her eyes widening. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No." Harrison shook his head, his gaze tender as it rested on her. "I am giving you a choice, something you once said you had never truly had. After everything that has happened, you deserve a peaceful life. Somewhere else. Safer. Without Mafia, without threats, without danger." Penny was quiet for a long time. She looked down at the drawing in her hands, then lifted her eyes to meet his. "If I am given a choice," she said slowly, weighing each word with care, "I choose to stay. Not because of a job, not because of money. Because this is my home. Because Noah and Lily are my family. And because—" She hesitated, her cheeks flushing beneath the moonlight. "Because?" Harrison asked, his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. Penny met his eyes with more courage than she had ever shown in her life. "Because of you. Because you are part of it too." Harrison stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing to almost nothing. He lifted his hand and gently raised her chin. "My hands are stained with blood," he whispered, sorrow threaded through his voice. "My past is dark. I am not worthy of you." Penny placed her hand over his, feeling the warmth of his skin. "I have a dark past as well," she replied softly. "Scars don't disappear, but you showed me light. You gave me a family. Let me do the same for you." Harrison looked at her for a long moment, as though committing every line of her face to memory. Then he leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. It was not hurried. It carried reverence and an unspoken promise. Penny closed her eyes, tears of happiness slipping down her cheeks. She felt the love within that kiss, felt the patience and quiet waiting it held. "I will wait," Harrison whispered near her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "As long as it takes. When you are ready, I will be here." They stood together on the balcony, shoulder to shoulder, gazing at the star-filled sky. No more words were needed. In the room behind them, Noah and Lily slept soundly, faint smiles resting on their lips as though dreaming of their happy family. 6 months later, the Cole mansion had become an entirely different place. The cold, intense atmosphere of the past had faded away, replaced by the sound of children's laughter echoing through the halls from early morning until late at night. Penny no longer wore the blue uniform of a housemaid. She dressed in simple yet elegant dresses, her hair falling naturally over her shoulders, her face radiant with a smile that seemed always to linger. Noah and Lily now called her Mommy Penny, as naturally as if it had always been so, as if she had been born to be their mother. Harrison had shifted most of his operations into legitimate enterprises, leaving the remaining shadows for Frank to manage while gradually withdrawing from the underworld. He was still powerful, still respected and feared, but that power was now used to protect his family rather than expand an empire. He laughed more, he loved more, and he devoted more time to his children than any mafia boss in history ever had. Once, Frank stepped into the study and found Harrison scrolling through family photographs on his phone. "Sir, you are becoming an ordinary man," Frank said with a teasing smile. "I am not sure whether to be pleased or worried." Harrison simply smiled, neither confirming nor denying it. But that smile said everything. That afternoon, Harrison sat on the lush green lawn while Lily perched behind him, attempting to braid his hair even though it was cut so short there was almost nothing to braid. She worked with patient determination, murmuring that Daddy would be the most handsome man in the world once she finished. Noah was trying to climb onto his father's back, demanding to be carried around the garden like a horse, his laughter ringing out each time Harrison neighed in playful protest. Penny stood on the porch with a glass of cool lemonade in her hand, watching the scene with the most contented smile she had ever known. This was her family. This was her home. This was the happiness she had once believed she would never have. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Harrison led Penny into the garden. They walked to the old stone bench beneath the great oak tree, where moonlight filtered through the branches and scattered silver across the grass. "I have something I want to give you," Harrison said, drawing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. It was not a lavish diamond ring box from a romantic film. It was small, simple, almost worn with time, yet carefully preserved. Penny opened it and found inside a plain silver ring, unadorned by gemstones or diamonds. But when she looked closer, she saw 4 names engraved delicately along the inner band: Harrison, Penny, Noah, Lily. "This is not just a proposal, it's a lifelong vow," Harrison said, his voice low and warm. Penny lifted her eyes to him in surprise. "Then what is it?" "It is a promise," Harrison replied, taking her hand. "A promise that no matter what happens, you are part of this family, forever. And whenever you are ready for the next step, I will wait. A lifetime if I must." Penny looked at the ring, at the 4 names engraved there, then back at the man before her. The man who had once been the terror of the underworld now stood looking at her with love and quiet patience in his eyes. "And what if I tell you," she smiled, tears of happiness shimmering at the corners of her eyes, "that I have been ready for a long time?" Harrison's smile was the brightest she had ever seen on his face. He gently slipped the ring onto her finger, then lifted her face and kissed her. Their first true kiss. It was tender, filled with love and with promises of a future yet to unfold. In the mansion that had once witnessed the darkest conspiracies, sunlight and laughter now reigned. Harrison Cole, once called the Shadow of Death, now sat on the grass while his daughter braided his hair and his son tried to climb onto his back. Penny stood on the porch, the ring gleaming on her finger, the most radiant smile upon her lips. This is not a fairy tale. No magic wand erased the darkness of the past or turned it into fresh fallen snow. The scars remain, on Penny's wrist, on her cheek, and in Harrison's heart. But there is something more miraculous than magic. 2 wounded souls found one another, healed together, and built a home from ashes, and that is their story. This story reminds us that true love doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't require grand castles or flowery promises. True love is built from sacrifice, from courage, from choosing to stay when everything is falling apart. Penny had no wealth or status, but she possessed a heart of gold and the strength of a woman willing to bleed for the children she loved. And Harrison, despite all his power, finally learned that the most precious thing in this world is not money or control, but family and genuine love. Thank you for watching the journey of Harrison and Penny. Do you believe love can truly heal such deep scars? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more daily tales of love and redemption. See you in the next video.